Hello and welcome back everybody. So in the last lesson we looked at the while and do while loops. In this lesson we're going to start looking at the for loop and the for each loop. Both really easy to understand and really useful things as a Java programmer to know. So let's just get straight to it. Let's delete the while loops because we don't need them. And I'm going to just change our list just to something different, just to change the example. So I'm going to have a animal list. And it's still going to be an array list, and I need to update the name here, here and here, and we also need to change this from integers to strings. So I'm going to have cat, dog and tortoise. Cool. So let's start with the indexed for loop first. So we write this, and there's three parts to this loop. So I'm going to write it first. So this is probably looking a bit strange, and don't worry about it for the moment. Let's just break it down. So there's three things going on here. When we declare a index for loop, we need a variable for it to, for the loop to increment. So here we just declare an integer called I and we set it to 0. In this part we say what's the condition for when the loop should stop. So this loop should run while I is less than 10. And this final part is what we want to do after each iteration of the loop. So after each time this loop runs, we're going to increment I by 1. If I print out the value of I here, this will probably make a bit more sense. So let's just look what happens when we run this. Cool. So we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9. And what's happening here? When the loop first runs, I is set to 0, like we've set here. After the loop has run once, I gets incremented, so it's 1, and this loop keeps running until I gets to 10. And then the loop stops because I is no longer less than 10. So we get, remember it starts from 0, we get 10 iterations of the loop. So that's pretty cool, but let's make this a bit more useful. Let's do something with our list we've got. So if we wanted to loop through all our list of animals and print them out, well, what we could do is we could use this index for loop. Because remember, to get something out of a list, we use an index. So instead of printing out here, we could do animal list dot get I, and let's print that out. I'll tell you what, to make it clearer, let's say string animal equals animal list dot get I, and let's print out the value of animal. Now this isn't going to work quite yet, and we'll watch what happens. So we get an index out of bounds exception. Now that's because we've set our loop to run 10 times, but there's only 3 things in animal. So as soon as it tries to do animal list.get, and that's the number 4, we're out of bounds. So what we can do is in the bit which says how long the loop should run, we can change this to animal list.size. So let's read this for loop again. The index starts at 0. We only increment it, we only run this loop while I is less than the size of our list, and we increment I each time. So if I run it now we just get cat, dog, tortoise, and the loop correctly stops, which is perfect. That's what we want. Great. Now this is a useful loop, and there's quite a lot of times when you're programming in Java you'll need this index for something, but quite a lot of the time you don't actually need the index and you just want to print out the values in the loop. Values in the list. So what we can do here is do a for each loop, and the way we do that, it's almost identical, but we say string animal list, and the way we read this is we say for each animal in the animal list, and we have to say what type of variable is in the animal list. Like if I tried to put an integer here, that's going to give us an error because animal list contains strings. So that's why that is a string. And we can call this, whatever we want. This could be AN, it could be, that's the name of the variable. You can decide. It doesn't there's no fix to what that needs to be. So I'm just going to call it animal because it's nice and clear. And then if I do the same thing in here, print out animal, we're going to get exactly the same result. And there we go, we get cat, dog, tortoise. And that's as simple as it gets for loops. Sometimes you'll need that index in an index for loop, sometimes you won't. And sometimes the for each loop, I personally think it just looks a little bit nicer and it's a bit neater. And if you don't need the index, then just don't bother with it. Now there's one tiny thing which you've probably picked up on as you were watching the video, which I've glossed over. Whenever we've declared an integer, we've always declared it with a capital letter, like so. But you'll notice in our loop, we've just used a small int. Now, I could have used a capital here. Everything would have ran exactly the same. I'll just prove that to you there. There we go, we still get the same output. But this is called a primitive int. And the difference between primitives and the class version of the integer, which we're using, I'm going to explain as soon as we start getting to the OOP lessons, which are going to be coming up very, very shortly. But for the time being, you can kind of just use int and integer interchangeably. But don't worry about it too much, it'll all be explained, and there's not really even a lot to know about it. So I hope you found this useful. Please like and subscribe if you have, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks everyone, bye bye.